It's now time for the Recovery Boys, Lewis Finch and Macon Moy, as they spend the next hour with you discussing the issues of alcoholism and drug addiction, as well as the road to recovery. Here's Lewis and Macon.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight, January 15th. Lewis?
Yes.
Welcome back to Sanford.
Thank you.
We had a nice meal.
Yes, we did.
We have a wonderful guest tonight. We'll introduce her in just a few minutes. What's going on at Wellwind, Lewis? Anything special?
Other than it's like they let the bridge down. Excuse me. That's the old analogy, because they're coming out of the woodwork. They've blown it out between Thanksgiving and New Year's, and then they're trying to. I think Kieran's nodding here. I think you'll agree. We're getting calls by the dozens.
Yeah. Well, let's face it. Everybody, the amateur hour is now over. It's officially over.
Yes.
Starts at Thanksgiving, culminates New Year's Eve, and they sprinkle Christmas in there. And if you have an appetite to get yourself in trouble with any kind of substance abuse, those are some high-profile days that happen. So I'm glad that you guys are there to take care of the ones that need the help.
Yep.
Tonight we will talk to Kayla. I'm going to bring her on here in a second and see how she's doing. Kayla, are you there?
I am.
Well, good evening. How are you doing? Did you have a good week?
I'm good. How are y'all?
We're good. We're good. We love, so just everybody, while I've got Kayla on, I completely forgot to tell everybody, if you want to listen to us online, you can go to therecoveryboys.com. You can pick us up on our website. You can also go to the radio station here, WFJA. The website's a little bit long, but I'll give it out. It's WFJA.WWGPradio.com. You can listen to us live through their site as well. If you want to call us, we'd love to have a phone call. 866-465-3110 is the way to get in touch with us. So, but we, just to catch everybody up, Kayla's in early recovery. She's agreed to come on and talk to us so we can kind of chart her progress and ask her interesting questions for people that are new to recovery, or maybe we got somebody out there thinking about recovery, and maybe Kayla can give them some insight or maybe some motivation to make that decision to live a different way. So, Kayla, one of the things I did want to ask you is, we've talked about what you do, what advice you would give somebody, but what's been the biggest surprise for you in early recovery? What's the thing that surprised you the most?
I guess just like the peace I have today. Just, being okay with where I am and things that happen, and knowing that my higher power has a plan for everything. Just that acceptance has been big.
It is nice, and especially when you come from the chaos that we all come from.
We were trying we were touching on it earlier, but Kayla, I wanted to ask: are you seeing more people in meetings?
Yeah, actually, my home group here in Southern Pines has grown right much since I started coming. I think the first meeting I ever came to here, I think we had maybe 6 people in the meeting, and now we're averaging probably 15 to 20 a meeting. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. And what kind of week did you have, Kayla? How'd you spend your week?
It was a good week. Pretty productive. I had lunch today with an old sponsor of mine. So. Well,
that's just wonderful to be able to check in with you and find out that you're still staying on that path. We will talk to you every week. Maybe next week we'll call you during the week. I'll call you during the week, and we'll start maybe coming up with some things that you'd like to talk about, or maybe you have questions for us, or maybe we can get some answers for you. So, is there any questions that you would have? I mean, Lewis and I are both in recovery, both in the business. So if there's ever anything that you want to hear from us, we'll be happy to share our wisdom or at least our experience with you.
All right.
But thanks so much for giving us a few minutes of your evening, and you have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Y'all too.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy. This is awesome.
Bye-bye.
It's so much fun to talk to somebody in early recovery, you know. So let's go ahead and introduce our guest for tonight. Very pleased to have Karen Wicker, the Executive Director of Drug Free Moore County, in studio with us tonight. Karen, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
We can't thank you enough for coming in. We're going to have a great conversation tonight about community awareness, community response to not just the opioid crisis, but just alcoholism and homelessness and all the things that our population of people that we deal with. They present so many unique problems, and we'll get you to kind of introduce yourself to our listeners and explain to us how you ended up doing what you're doing.
All right, we start now.
Please do.
I'm with Drug Free Moore County. We are a nonprofit coalition located in Moore County, actually in Carthage, and the Moore County commissioners back in 1989, and I'm not real sure what drug crisis was going on at that time, but saw that there needed to be a task force, and so they appointed several folks from different county offices as well as community people to begin looking at what they can do to address the drug issues, mostly looking at working with the schools and with students, and kind of along that same line of just say no, and how to prepare students of what's out there and why they shouldn't do drugs. And so we've been in existence for quite a while and have had several different funders and grants and things, and right now our coalition is still going pretty strong. We've had ups and downs in our funding, but we are currently focusing more on recovery, helping folks in recovery, helping people to get to recovery resources, and also helping families that are dealing with someone in their family that may be either in active recovery or is actively using, and just helping them, because sometimes family members become addicted to their family member that's maybe using. So it's a big job, but we have lots of support from different community organizations, and I'm executive director, which only means I'm executive director of myself, because there's just me, and I work 20 hours a week. So I think, you know, it's a big issue, but we've been mighty in what we've been able to get done. What else?
I mean, what is it that you find interesting about dealing with this population of people?
Oh, wow. My original background was with cooperative extension, and I don't know, for some reason I always looked toward, not the underdog, but folks that seem to be forgotten. We worked with single moms, we worked with, I went into the prisons, and I just, now working with folks that sometimes just feel like they're just thrown away and not supported by our community, because it is a disease, but it's like diabetes or cancer. When your family member has that, people bring casseroles and come see you and say, how can I help? But if you have a family member that is trying to recover, a lot of times people don't even share that because there's the stigma that goes along with that. We're really trying hard to kind of change that stigma and bring more awareness to the fact that people can recover. And I've been going into the Moore County Detention Center now for about 5 years, and I started that program. And I've had girls ask me in the past, I usually just work with the women, and they'll say, well, why do you come? And I go, well, why wouldn't I? You know, and they seem surprised, like, you know, I retired 10 years ago, but this is my passion. This is what I feel like my higher power, my God is saying, you know, to the least of these, you know, and that we need to work with folks, and just a smile on the faces of some of the women when we walk into the group meeting. And I used to kind of dress down, you know, because I'm thinking, here they are in their pink outfits with, and they'll never wear pink again after they get out, but their pink outfits and their orange shoes, and I used to kind of dress down, but I said, well, no, I'm just going to wear my regular clothes. And they go, oh, I love those shoes. And, oh, you smell good today. And, it just brings them a little bit of, normalcy and reality. But I get just as much from those groups as hopefully they get.
We talk about that all the time. When we leave, I was telling Lewis at dinner, a friend of mine, Waylon, and I went over and we spoke at the Colony on Friday night. And it's amazing, you spend an hour and you're with guys that are in treatment. And it's just amazing the conversation that takes place. It's a little bit like this show. It's not scripted. It just starts and then it goes somewhere. But we always feel so much better, don't we? I mean, better about ourselves and think that maybe we make a difference. But, the reason we do it to be of service, to our fellow alcoholics, drug addicts. But it's a very selfish motivation, and we do it for ourselves as well. And it's a big part of it.
Well, the analogy I've heard is that when you get on an airplane and they do all the announcements, they say, if the mask comes down, put yours on first, because you're no good to anybody if you're passed out. You can't help them at all.
Yeah. Our buddy Roy Mashburn sent me this caption. Roy's a friend of Lewis and ours, and he's probably listening tonight. If not, I'll call him and explain to him that it's a requirement that he be at least one of our listeners. But he sent me this little picture, and it was an empty water jug, and it said, it's hard to pour somebody a glass of water if the pitcher's empty.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And, the whole concept is self-care. You can't be good for somebody else if you're not good for yourself. Right. And I think that, we sometimes, I was telling both you guys at dinner, I watched this guy tonight at the convenience store, and because I'm in recovery, maybe just because I'm sober for finally, it's taken me 7 years, and I'm still clearing, my head's still clearing a little bit, but you observe people,
Right.
you really do observe people.
Makes you more aware.
Yeah, and I see this guy, he's been working all day, he's over there, he's fixing him a hot dog, and he's got him a drink, and he's dirty, and he's worked hard, and I look outside his truck, and he's got his dog tied to the truck, and the dog's drinking some water, and he's he's paying for his stuff, and the money that's left over, he says, let me have that much in gas. And it's just amazing. The world lives much differently than we see it on TV, but it's out there.
Yeah.
It is out there, and it's just that population of people that are trying to sometimes escape reality. Some of us, there's a lot of people, I think, that use different kinds of substances to escape the reality, but some of us have some of us, 10 or 15% of us, can't process alcohol the way, or drugs or whatever else, and we're going to end up getting hooked on it, and then it's going to take a life on unto itself, and so it is interesting.
Yeah, that's like the ladies that I work with in the detention center. I try not to look them up online to see what they were charged with or anything, because I'll go in there with an open mind. But a lot of times we'll do a group exercise where we go around the room and we go, okay, what first word comes to your mind, how are you feeling today? And I might be going in there thinking, oh, I got to do this, and I need this when I get out. And I get in there and they're going, oh, I feel content, or I feel peaceful, and I'm thinking, these ladies have nothing, and yet they can still feel content and peaceful. And that's what I said. Sometimes they bring me back to reality, and we try to encourage, we use the curriculum, Helping Women Recover by Stephanie Covington. But a lot of times we kind of veer off of that a little bit, and we let them color. We talk about going to the well and what are we thirsty for. And a lot of times, I'll share too. I think that makes us real. And I also take a peer support person with me. And our peer support folks are people that are in recovery, have been in recovery for at least 2 or 3 years, and they have been trained to share their lived experience and also help folks on their journey toward recovery. And it's kind of interesting how once I started bringing in the peer support person, I mean, I can relate to the folks. I have a family member that's in recovery, but I come from at a different angle.
Yep.
And whereas she comes from it, like, hey, I've been here, I've worn that jumpsuit, whatever. And a lot of our goal is that for the young women, or the women, not young, because I've had anywhere from 18 to 80 actually in our group, that if they're not going to prison or not going to rehab when they get out, that they can call Drug-Free Moore County and we can work with them in providing some support. And also, we're trying to get a recovery center, community recovery center, where we can offer even more services for them, like helping them look for a job, helping them be maybe creative. Recovery doesn't have to be work. Because you're working on not only your recovery, but you're working on who you are. And so that's, we call our community recovery center more recreations, because we're going to try to look at helping them recreate who they need to be, who they want to be.
Yeah, sometimes recovery could be, you could use the word discovery instead of recovery, because
Right.
a lot of times once the person does finally physically get away from the effect of alcohol, they have all kinds of different thoughts, interests, activities, and so a lot of times they've never had the opportunity to expand on what that means to them.
Right.
Well, I was going to ask too, and you mentioned some of the aspects of it, but what does support look like at that level? Give me some specifics.
In the detention
Yeah.
center?
Well, when that plus the folks that are just getting out. What?
Well, a lot of times it's a listening ear. I know a lot of times I'll ask who's getting out within the next week or so, and we ask them, tell me what that day is going to look like. And most of the time they're talking about what they're going to eat, because the food is not that great there. But and then what's it going to look like in another week? And then we, as the peer support folks, or just I've talked to a lot of them, is just what is your goal? Well, I need to get a car. Well, okay, in order to get a car, you probably need to get a job, and then in order to get a job, we need to find out if you have a felony or whatever. So we just try to listen to them and work with them to see where they're at. A lot of them want their children back, but again, we've got to look at what the circumstances are. And I mean, we're not miracle workers, but I think just having someone to listen to and to understand where they're at. And we also, if we get the community recovery center, our hope is to actually hire some folks that have come out of jail and they're still in recovery, to sort of get them having a start on a resume so that they can go forward and get a job somewhere else.
It's interesting. I was thinking about, as you're talking, we did a golf tournament last spring to raise money for Healing Transitions in Raleigh.
Yes.
And which is a phenomenal organization. And they actually had some guys there who they thought would be good volunteers. They let them come. These guys were so excited about being there. They're so appreciative. And they did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Amazing job. And then at the end, we had our buffet, and we were telling them, take all the food you want. Just go for it. Take all the food. And they went, really? Yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
They were just eating it up, but literally. But it was, you see the gratitude in them.
Well, we had we had overdose awareness at the courthouse, and I was going to Dollar Tree to get some balloons for it, and a lady walked up to me, a young girl. She said, hey, Miss Karen. And I was like, hey, and I didn't recognize her. And of course I didn't recognize her because she didn't have a pink outfit on. And she said, yeah, I'm so-and-so. And I said, oh, yeah. She said, I was in your group. And I was like, oh, awesome. And I started telling her, I said, well, we're having an overdose awareness tonight at the courthouse. Would love for you to come. And I've told the girls at the detention center that we're having it. And she said, I'm going to come and I'm going to wear a pink shirt because I'm going to represent the girls at the detention center. And it was kind of already got started. And I looked out of the corner of my eye, and there was 3 girls walking around the courthouse with 3 pink shirts on. So and that she was just smiling. Of course, she had her ankle bracelet on, and she had to leave early, but it was awesome.
Let me ask you. We always love personal stories. Can you think of any particular people coming out that have really impacted you? And we'll skip the names. Anonymity is very important in all of our conversations. But, I mean, I think sometimes people wonder if we make some of this stuff up. Did these recovery stories, or are y'all just making it up, or did they really happen? And I've got some, but I was just wondering, any that stick out in your mind?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Well, I know one that she did very well, and she was going to go to Healing Transitions in Raleigh, but she said, no, I want to do it myself. I want to get my children back. I want to get a job. And we kept thinking, well, I don't know if you're ready. But we were there talking her through it, and she wound up getting 2 jobs. She was living in a hotel at the time. She got a mobile home, rented a mobile home, and her sister started helping her, and she started getting visitation from her children. So I haven't talked to her in the last little bit. A lot of times when they start doing really well, they kind of back off calling us. But
life takes over and they start to live.
So I'm hoping and praying she's still doing okay.
Well, that's just so cool. So tell us a little bit. If somebody's listening tonight wants to find out more about Drug Free Moore County, you have a website.
Yes, we do. It's Drug Free Moore.
That's right, drugfreemore.org.
.org, yes, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I surfed it a little bit this afternoon. It's a very good
we
site.
got a new one. Yeah, that's our newest one. Don't go to our old one.
Yeah, and so that's cool. And I do want to say hey to Kayla, my wife tonight. She's at home, but she's very active in Drug Free Moore County.
Yeah,
she's a big believer.
Yeah, she's has helped us on our Run for Recovery, which is one of our fundraisers, and also sort of our awareness. And she's been phenomenal getting us sponsors, and she's been coming to the board meetings. And the other day she said, well, we were talking about getting new board members, and she said, well, I want to be a board member. And I said, well, I thought you already were. So
she told me that.
Yeah. So she's awesome, and she works in the detox unit. So we just had a meeting just today about talking about getting some peer support there too.
Yeah, well, that's one of the 2 things I kind of want to move into conversation-wise is your relationship, your association with the local sheriff, and how good that is, and all the great things that are going to come from that, what's already happened, and maybe some things that are going to come. And then your work with the folks at First Health and the program that the 5-county program that they're working on.
Opioid Response Consortium.
Yeah, and so tell us a little bit about how you.
I hope I got it right.
Hey, I do have one question. If I
Yes,
can just
sir.
skip back.
Yeah.
I know we have a very planned schedule here. but in talking about the prisons, what percentage of prison population do you think has either mental illness or addiction as part of their
90 at least.
90%?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, their charges may not reflect that.
No, but the behavior does.
When I ask the girls, and I have either 14 to 20 every week, to raise their hand if they have had somewhere in their past misuse of substances as well as mental health, raise their hand. So, and they volunteer, they sign up to come to the class. It's and they, after 17 weeks, they get a certificate. We've talked to the judges, and hopefully that helps them with their sentencing.
I think that the industry, I know from, I just finished getting my master's, and they don't teach. It's now, if you're going to get any kind of education in this industry, it's going to be on co-occurring disorders. I think that everybody now recognizes that if you have a problem with drugs or alcohol, you've probably got a different problem, and the drugs or the alcohol are probably a symptom. There's probably something deeper that needs to get taken care of. And the professionals that are being trained these days are going to be able to be proficient in addressing both of those. And I think that's going to have to, it is. And, Karen, you work, we had the sheriff from Lee County, Tracy, and he was wonderful. And, we talked about how, unfortunately, in our society, especially in the smaller counties, the local jail is the homeless shelter, and it's also the mental health center almost. I mean,
Right.
they end
It's the
up.
addiction treatment center.
Right. A lot
That's
of people
correct.
come there to detox. They say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You know,
And these guys, these deputy sheriffs, you got to take your hat off to them. And sheriffs, their entire staff, they do the best they can.
oh yeah.
But it's a bad situation, and so I'd like to hear how, how do you interact with the drug-free Moore County and the sheriff's department, and also over at the hospital. Tell us a little bit about those programs.
Okay, Sheriff Ronnie Fields is our sheriff. He wasn't the sheriff when I first started working with the detention center, but he's a big believer in working with families and working with those that are wanting to get treatment and get help. He actually had a celebrate recovery in August this year, and we helped him with that, and I haven't told him this, but we're hoping that he's going to be a big part of our Run for Recovery celebration in September this year. But he's even though we go in on Tuesdays, and because we started going in as volunteers, other organizations started coming in, like the pastors do Bible study with the men. They do they do parenting for the women, and then now AA is in there for the men and the women. And I feel like because we kind of opened that door, but they are very open to it and wanted these folks to come in and provide support for those that were incarcerated. The sheriff has got a grant, and I'm not real sure. I'm still not real clear on this where he got the money from, but I believe we're going to be starting a Vivitrol program for inmates that volunteer to do that, where they'll get their first shot while they're still incarcerated. And then we're hoping, especially if we get our recovery center, that we'll be able to help with getting that second shot, and then providing counseling groups and support and that kind of thing
So
for those that
why don't you?
volunteer.
I like the way you're going with this. Can you explain to people what Vivitrol is and what the significance of it is?
Okay, and you may have to help me with this.
I feel like I'm back in school.
I know. Yeah, you have more knowledge of this. Vivitrol, from my understanding, is different from Subutex or methadone, whereas those are for detoxing, and they are medicated assisted treatment. Vivitrol is, I see y'all Googling. Okay, good.
We got a sheet.
Then Vivitrol is a shot you get once every 3 months, I think, and it cuts the desire for the drug. And you volunteer because it's very expensive. And I've heard several people just recently, Dr. Linger from RCNC just told me that if America could afford it, Vivitrol would be the way to go to provide treatment for folks to cut that desire so that they can go to the groups or go through whatever kind of support they're wanting to go through.
Yeah, it blocks the receptors. It's basically, that's kind of a professional way. And, it's interesting if you ever want to figure out addiction and they start talking about how the brain works and how the, the receptors and all those things. It made my head spin when I was in school. We learned all about it, but it makes perfect sense. And so it's basically a block, so that if you use the drug, you don't get the payoff, you don't get the high. And the thinking being, well, if the person doesn't use the drug, if he doesn't get the high, he won't use the drug. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. It's not a exact science, but it is one of those.
It's another pathway to recovery, and that's what we talk about, multiple pathways to recovery. Because most of the time, if you're in the detention center or you're incarcerated, you're going to be detoxed. Hopefully there's not any in the jail, but you'll be detoxed so that if you do get the shot, then when you get out and someone does, because it's out there, and you're not going to get that high, so you're going to go, well, there's no point. I don't necessarily think it's a high. I think it's just feeding that craving
We've had Dr. Jerry on,
Yeah.
and it's medicated assisted treatment. It's basically what we're talking. This is just one of the avenues of medicated assisted treatment, which is using a drug to treat a drug problem. There's a lot of conversation about it. Obviously, the 12-step fellowships are abstinence-based treatments where you just retrain the brain. There's cognitive training, and there's all kinds of different conversations. But at the end of the day, whatever works.
Well, you want options.
You got
Yes,
to.
you do.
Because you're dealing with
everybody's
multiple
different. Yeah.
Well, the other thing about Vivitrol, which I tend to like, is that unlike Suboxone, Subutex, which are, I think, are oral medicines primarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there are probably other versions of it, but Vivitrol is given in shot form, which once you give it,
It's done.
It's done, and you don't have to worry about the addict or the alcoholic not taking it.
Right.
So you've got given it to the person who needs it.
Right. And if we can provide, and I think that's one piece that we're looking at working with the Sheriff's Department is to be able to provide that support for those folks that have gotten the shot, and then also looking for support to get the second shot. We have office space if we can get all the books out of it. People have donated books to the detention center, and they're just stacked up in this one office, but we're going to have a peer support person in that office as well as someone that can help with the when they get the Vivitrol program started.
The opioid consortium that we discussed is a 5-county. It's a grant that has been awarded. The money goes a lot of different places, but the one that you seem to be very involved in is the peer support program.
Right.
And why don't you explain? I mean, I think that we've talked about what a peer support is, but practically speaking, I mean, you're actually putting somebody with some experience in places that people who need to have a conversation with somebody actually reside at.
Right. Well, okay, I'll give an example of what one of our peer support folks did not too long ago. Well, Ashley, the sheriff, got a call from a mom who said, my daughter has overdosed for the second time. She has a special needs child. I don't know what to do. And she was coming to meet with him, and I just happened to be in the room, and I said, well, I can bring a peer support, and we can meet with her. And as a result, the peer support was able to meet with the mom and meet with her daughter, and after much conversation, the mom wasn't all for it at first, like, oh, she can't go away, it's almost Thanksgiving, and the little boy's birthday is coming up, but they worked it out, and she was able to go. She didn't have any money, so it just so happens our peer support person, our supervisor, is a CSAC, and so she was able to do the assessment, get the referral number, and get her into a state-supported program. She was supposed to go for 1 week, but they
Extended it?
Yeah, they extended it. They assessed her, and our peer support has gone by to check on her, and things are going really well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I always want to bring people back to our website, therecoveryboys.com. We do have resource information on one of our tabs, and it does list facilities for people with insurance, and it does list facilities for people without resources, no insurance and no money. So if you need to find that stuff out, do you have resource information?
That's on ours. It's also on the Sand Hills Opioid
Consortium
website as well, but we have that as well that you can print, and we tried to put in there what insurance it took, if it didn't take insurance. But we also got another list from Daymark, so we try to stay up to date on that because it sometimes changes. But there again, that's another issue, is there's just not enough treatment out there.
There's not.
And the opportunities are
There's not.
slim pickings. So.
Especially for people with no resources. I mean, Lewis is in the business. He could tell you more about the treatment business than anybody. And what we're doing was a drip of what we're the people that we're reaching. It's just a drip of the people who actually need it.
Well, Macon, you've brought this up to me before, but all that money that's going to be coming in from the opioid companies.
From the pharmaceutical
companies,
right.
and I don't know that they have I know they don't. They don't have a handle on where that money's going to be going or what it's going to be used for.
Well, it's a political football.
Right.
And so it depends on who's going to be in power, how much ink or how much breaking news this, breaking news that they can get out of it. But at least, and Karen, you mentioned this, and we can't talk about it enough. It's at least being discussed now. It used to be hidden.
Yes.
There was a time where having a conversation about addiction and alcoholism was a dirty little secret in families.
Right.
And now that I think that they're less inhibited, to be honest, with themselves.
Somewhat. The stigma's still there, but not as bad as, like, my father was a functional alcoholic, and my mother wouldn't go to Al-Anon, and so I went for her. I don't know why. And so, but so I said, well, it's okay, you can go. It's, I had to test it for her. And so she went, but she didn't like it because at that time you could smoke. People smoked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in the room. So I can't stand the smoke. But she didn't want to go. She didn't want people to see her at an Al-Anon meeting. But I think, again, there's not enough support for family members.
That's the truth.
We tried to start a Narnon group in Moore County about 5 years ago, and it was hit or miss, and it finally just dissolved. And I don't know I know there's Al-Anon, and they're pretty prominent down in Pinehurst area, but there's not a whole lot. I know in our county is geographically very large. And I know Lee County is a smaller geographic county, so when something happens in Sanford, everybody can come to Sanford. But, I think we just need more resources for family members to get help and support, to help them understand what substance use is, what the disorders is, and ways not to enable their children or family member to use, but enable them to get well.
Well, Karen, I wrote a note here. This is one of the first things we started talking about, and we kind of gotten back to it. No, but it keeps it. Maybe it's just something that I can't comprehend, but why is it that after all this time, 1925, I think, 35, when AA started?
36.
36. Okay,
36.
Thank you. Still a long time.
Yeah.
Why is it that we still have this shame and guilt? You've had celebrities come out. You've had sports figures come out. You've had both die. And you still have this thing in the background where people are in absolute total denial until it's way too late. And you've been around this, it sounds like, a lot longer than I have, at least the recovery component of it. Is there an answer? There probably isn't.
No, but I think still that people are afraid that this is not a disease. This is something that someone can take control and do it if they want to do it. And I've seen family members get angry with their family member and say, if you love me, you'd stop, or you've got children, stop for them. And that's not, just like you said, in an airplane, you've got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of your children or your other family members. So I think it's just that fear that, and then too, if you're a parent of someone in recovery or someone that's using, you feel like you didn't do something right.
Your failure as a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't understand too how prevalent. I mean, it's so easy to get anything you want to get out there.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And then the mental health aspect of it is people are self-medicating. More people are, and I think a lot of it has to do with the social medias and everything. They're lonely. I mean, there's a lot of factors, and I don't know how we're going to deal with the stigma, except we're just helping community become more aware of that this is a brain disease.
Well, one of the things that I applaud you guys for is you celebrate recovery. I love the Run for Recovery. That's a great event you guys put on. Everybody out there knows why you're there, and so anybody that shows up, you don't happen by there. It's a destination event, and so you have to have more of those things. But it does. If we as a society could ever quit glorifying the lifestyle of the alcoholic and the drug addict in the movies and everything else in the TV shows, I mean, we don't have a lot of hit TV shows that celebrate recovery. There's a lot of.
There's one show, Mom, that I love.
I haven't seen it.
Oh gosh, you gotta watch it. It's great.
But you know, and as you mentioned, social media. I mean, my goodness, social media is such a dangerous place.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, if you want to figure out how you can get a substance, you can use social media. They talk in code. There's going to be a rave here, and next thing you know, everybody's showing up, and so it certainly is dangerous. But I agree with Lewis. I mean, my goodness, how many people have to die, or how many lives have to be destroyed before everybody kind of collectively puts their heads together? And how can we get this so that it's a? I remember Governor McCrory, who was one of our guests, former Governor McCrory. He told us when he was on, he said, addiction was the biggest challenge of my being governor. He said, we don't have a game plan. As a state, as a society, we don't have a game plan.
I'll be honest
there
with you.
is a strategic plan now. I think there. One of the conferences I've gone to, there is a North Carolina strategic plan.
I don't know that they've actually
I'll share
defined the
that
problem. I think that that they think they've defined the problem, and you've got some people, because it's political, who are using it as a political football, and they're not the ones that should be making those decisions. I don't think.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and we've talked about it. And one of the things I want this show, one of the things that we'll commit ourselves as this show, is to follow the money. We'll talk to the politicians, because the general public reads that all this money's coming in. They just assume that it'll be spent properly.
Yeah.
Let's see if it sprinkles down to the person who needs it, the guy who just spent a few dollars on gas.
Yeah.
I mean, the money needs to sprinkle itself down. It does not need to clog up in all the areas that it usually clogs itself up. And it certainly, you know, education and publicity are important components, but that's not where the money should be going, because then the media gets paid.
Yeah.
You know, last thing you need is another campaign designed to make people understand they have a problem. It needs to be on the treatment side, at least in my opinion. And so hopefully we'll talk to enough people, say, hey, well, hold on for a second. The state just got a settlement of $37 million. Where's that go?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know Moore County, because we did a presentation for the Moore County Commissioners when those attorneys came down to say why we thought Moore County needed to be a part of that lawsuit. Now, where that money is, I have no idea, because we went and talked to the county manager and the chairman of county commissioners right before Christmas, because our space, we don't have much space for drug-free Moore County, and since now that we are getting funding through the Sand Hills Opioid Consortium for the peer support program, we need more space. And they were like, well, you know, they act like, I don't know where you can get the money, you know. So, and that's part of our recovery center too. We want a recovery center. They kept saying, well, you can go to Southern Pines, you can go to Pinehurst. There's buildings down there. I said, no, we want it in Carthage. Carthage is the county seat. Carthage is where we should be located so that folks can find us. And we've been looking at a site that's around the courthouse square. And our biggest thing is we keep saying we want to be loud and proud, and we want to paint the door purple. You know, we want people to say, hey, that's that place where you can go and find out information, or they have sober events. And so we can promote more sober events as well. And they have yoga, you know, for recovery. But, I mean, I get excited when I think about all the things that we could do, but we just don't have a lot of funding.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of times we get idea rich and execution poor. You know, that's the problem. You know, in Moore County, I mean, you certainly are working in Lee County. Sheriff Carter, is there a drug-free Lee County that you're aware of?
I'm not aware of.
I'll have to ask him. I'll have to call him and ask him, because the public needs to be involved in this if it's going to work.
Right. And you need to bring, because on our drug-free Moore County board, we have people from the Sheriff's Department, people from EMS, people from social services, people from the community. We have people in recovery and faith community, and they all need to be at the table. We're still working on the schools. We've had them in the past, but we want to get them a part of it as well. And if we're all talking about it, I think that makes a bigger impact than just a couple little chickens out there.
There's so many ways this thing. I mean, we've just in less than 15 or 20 minutes, we've just addressed this. That we've come up with more angles on this, and I do think, and this is the frustration I have, that some group of people, whoever that group of people is, need to sit down and define what the problems are and what the solutions are. And I recognize that there are immediate needs. That's what matting is about, right? Getting people drugs that they need before they die. That's what Narcan's about.
Right.
Absolutely need it. But there also this educational component behind it that says, in the last 80 years, we've come this far. You can't see it, it's like a half inch. But that's the power of radio. So, but that's, to me, that's the shame of this whole thing, that you don't have more sustained recovery efforts and recovery understanding about the problem.
You know, Lewis, if we, let's ask Karen, if somebody's listening to us tonight and they wanted, that, you know, maybe they've become motivated, how would they be involved with you? What would the process be for the public to reach out to your organization?
To call us. I know we've had a lot of calls just recently. I just had a text today, a lady that taught a painting class for our peer support folks at Christmas time, and she texted me and she said, I just have this pull that I really feel like I want to help you guys. I want to help Moore County. I want to help with this because she's had experience with it in her immediate family. And she says, I want to help. I want to do something. And I've got a lot of moms that are like that. So we're trying to pull some of those folks together to help us with our fundraising, as well as just, I know when we did Recovery Month, we made up signs. One of the ladies came up with an idea of, you know, recovery is possible, celebrate Recovery Month. And she went around and sold the signs so people could put, like, they're like little political signs, to put them out in their yard. You know, just trying to start that conversation. And I know we've gotten calls. I'm going to a garden club next week, and then we had a call from one of the churches that have Stephen Ministries. And their Stephen Ministry folks were running into family members that were dealing with it. And they said, how do we talk to them about it? So we're getting more and more calls of like, we want more information. What is it that you do? You know, tell me, you know. And so we're just trying to, you know, beat the path, you know, to out in the community and talk about it.
That's the thing is when if there's a way for us to make this part of our community's identity, that this is, you know, unfortunately, when we see news reports, I know Sheriff Carter was sharing some of the information with us. It's usually about all of the damage and all the bad things that have happened. We don't keep stats on the number of people in recovery. We always, and it's just, I think it's just the way society works, we seem to identify the bad stuff and we talk about that the most. We don't spend enough time talking about I wonder how many people in Moore County are living recovery. That would be an interesting conversation. That
would be great, yeah. And also to hear their stories. You know, Voices in Recovery is a national effort, and I had thought about working, I know the consortium is talking about putting some blogs on their website from the peer support folks telling their stories, but also we've been thinking about trying to, as folks do come out of prison or detention center, to, you know, we've got a lady that's real good at writing, and so helping her help them write their story. I keep telling the girls in the jail, I said, you know, you guys have a story.
Yeah.
And people need to hear it. And I actually go to Bible study right after I get out of jail. I always go, oh, I just got out of jail, sorry I'm late. And but they're always going, well, how are the girls today? how are the girls, and so they're interested. So I've created a peak with them too. So it's just having that conversation, always talking about it, always being aware, like you were aware of the guy.
I was.
in the
I don't know why. And
Yeah.
and the thing is that I'm aware of being in the business and working with guys that I work with. I'm aware of the failures, but I try and focus on the successes. And believe me, I've got some unbelievable stories of guys that, if you'd have met them when I met them, you would have said, "Let's just go ahead and get a dark suit and get ready for the funeral," And
Yeah.
they're productive, happy, and you know what? The really cool thing, especially this one situation that has just been so great in the last 2 weeks, is one of the guys that was one of the worst drinkers I've ever personally worked with. He's now working with a guy who is doing great, and when you're seeing a second and third generation of recovery starting to work, that's when you get excited about what the opportunity is.
Right.
If we can talk about it, we don't talk about that kind of stuff. We want to talk about the guy who relapsed and they found him dead with a needle in his arm. That seems to be
Yeah.
more interesting to
that
people.
makes the news more, or who got arrested for, lacing things with fentanyl or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and we have, I think that one of the things that I heard you talk about are the families, because sometimes the families are the last, we spend so much time talking about the addict or alcoholic. The families, the children, that's where the real destruction and the real harm. It'll break your heart if you know some of those stories.
Yeah, and another sad piece of that, and what has changed over the years, is that it used to be the grandparents, and some grandparents are raising some of these children, but now they're finding that the grandparents are using as well. So it's a multi-generational addiction. So, the children are winding up in foster care, and so it's changing the whole, social picture, of how families are being raised and taken care of.
Yeah, and it is some of it's horrific when you hear about it, some of the stories. But then you also, like I say, for every bad one I hear, I know there's 2 more good ones out there. What we have to do is we have to spread the good word. Karen, we always run out of time quicker than we think we're going to. But if somebody wanted to help Drug-Free Moore County, what would you have them do?
Call us. Our number is 910-947-1902. We're out of Carthage. But also, you can check our website. We have a awesome Facebook page, and we are always posting things on that. Our Facebook page is just Drug-Free Moore County Facebook. So you can Google us and find us there, and we really got a lot of following on that. And we try to post what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah, and
You have a great website.
Yeah, you do have a
thank
great
you.
website.
It's very good.
And why don't you give us a quick rundown of the events you do on an annual basis, the things that you, as an organization, the things that you kind of your marquee events.
Well, right now it's mostly the Run for Recovery, and that's usually in September. And then we do overdose awareness and try to remember those that have lost their lives. But we also, at that time, do celebrate those that have recovered. And we've got a big fundraiser coming up in September. It seems like we do everything in September because it's Recovery Month. But the peer support program right now is we've got folks located in not only the detention center, but a halfway house and some other treatment facilities. But we can always use volunteers to help with supplies, because we need journals, we need even magazines sometimes, so they can do their vision boards and just little things like that. But check our Facebook page. That's mostly where we'll list most of the things that are going on.
Cool.
She's right. I'm on it right now.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
It's all on here.
Yeah, I just listed something about a crisis intervention training for families. It's actually going to be here in Lee County that Sand Hills Center is doing to help family members. So it's a one-day training that they can help. I think it's on down, but no, it's on up. But it talks about crisis intervention for families. It's a one-day course, and so we're helping to promote that as well. So.
Well, Louis, any additional questions or comments for Karen?
No, it spawned more, I guess, inner rage in me because of this.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, not you.
Well, good. Now
It's-
everybody needs to
no,
be raging.
well,
about
but
it, yeah.
it's just frustrating to me. I like Karen and you. I see it all day and every day, and I see the same complaints from different faces, and it's just frustrating from my standpoint that the specifics that we need to be addressed don't seem to be being addressed. I mean, you guys got a lot going on here, a ton of stuff going on here, and it's great. So it's not this. It's to me, it's about a mindset that still labels this as shame and guilt. And I don't know where you go with that. In a society that seems to kind of to your point making that in the movies and in television seems to romanticize the drug culture.
Well, not to mention that, I mean, the alcohol industry is a multi-billion dollar industry. I mean, we legalized the very poison that we know kill people and kill families. And so, and it's in there, all the movies and everything else. And now you got this movement of legalization of marijuana, which is, you know, I mean, there's certainly, we could talk about it forever, the pros and cons of it. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's not a good thing. You know, it's not a good thing. I don't care how you would explain it to me, but I don't know how we turn the tide. But well, you know, at least we're talking about it.
Yeah, and I think having the Recovery Boys having this podcast and this radio program is awesome because not only can the podcast now I can post it on my Facebook page and post it on the website and on the consortiums. And one little fact I want to tell you about the alcohol, I do this when I talk to groups, is two faults. I say, well, you know, they don't know that the United States is the #1 consumer of alcohol over any other country in the world. You know, you'd think France with the wine and Germany with the beer, whatever, but no, it's the United States. Just stand in the grocery store one day, you know, and see all the beer and soda products coming through. So.
Yeah, well, listen, you get to the convenience stores and look at the number of those big cans. Everybody getting off work, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And it's...
Have one to drive home with.
Yeah.
I've seen, the latest figures I've seen, and we talked about this, the opiates are getting all the press.
Right.
And they probably should because people are dying instantaneously from those. But 70,000 people, the last count I saw, are dying from opiates. 88,000 died from alcohol.
Right.
And let me tell you
women is going up in women.
Yes, it's increasing in females.
Let me tell you something else that's going on. There's a resurgence of cocaine use, and it's starting to show up in the I mean the really cool people with lots of money are starting to show back up in the bathrooms with their little funny little bullets and everything else. And so if you don't pay attention to it, it doesn't go away. I mean, if you act like if your strategy is to ignore it, it's not going to work. Yeah. It's never going to go away. Nope. And, you know, we have, I know my children, because of what happened to me, my story, my children, I got 3 people out there that are aware of the problem, but it's because it was branded in their brains from seeing their dad almost die in the hospital because he couldn't quit drinking and taking pain pills. And so, unfortunately, and, you know, we call it the bottom, I call it the bounce, you know, if you're lucky enough to survive the bounce, hopefully everybody kind of pays attention to that. But we'll keep on talking about it. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing.
2020.
That's right.
Know? And that's what I want us to have 2020 vision as we look at substance use disorder and going forward with hopefully doing recovery.
Well, we will. That's a great. Somebody else, this guy I'll walk with in the morning, Paul Strawberry, he said 2020 is the year of perfect vision. Well, you know, certainly it's a great mark. Louis, any closing thoughts, buddy?
No, I'm just happy to meet Karen.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Thanks for supper.
We'll have to
listen, anytime, and as always know, you can call us anytime and let us know what's going on, and we'll certainly talk about it. We'll have you back on as the peer support program grows and everything else. We'll continue
when we get our recovery center,
and then one of the last thing, and as we close, one of the last thing is that we are probably going to introduce somebody here in the near future that is active in addiction. We've got Kayla, who is active in recovery.
Cool.
I actually want to have somebody on that's actually using because I think there's a lot of questions. that people have.
That would be a good conversation.
It would be a great conversation. I just got to find.
Help.
Okay, I got to find the right person.
Yeah,
Got to find the right person. So thank you for joining us tonight. We'll look forward to talking to you next week. If you look at our website, our guest next week, who we don't know who it's going to be yet, will be posted. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Recovery Boys on WFJA.